We're back, and we've got che0nsu versus Tyler coming up as match 1 of the day. And, you know, we'll see what happens with Tyler. I'm very interested to see performance-wise, as he is a player, I think, that most pros respect at the minimum, I think, after his performance, especially in the previous years of Hearthstone. But definitely in the last week or so, seemed a little bit shaky, even, you know, going to the extent of, say, you know, not played tons, you know, kind of had a bit of a cock-up last week, but got away with it because it ended up being a pretty good play with that Zephyr, so yeah, fair enough. But he's going up against che0nsu, I feel, has had a way better start to the season in Season 2 as opposed to Season 1.
Yeah, I've liked a lot of what I've seen from che0nsu. I was, you know, he didn't perform very well in Season 1, that's no secret, and I was a little skeptical of some of his plays as well, but it feels like he's, you know, buckled down, really got to grips with the matchups, and certain expansions, certain cycles, nerfs or whatever work for some players and don't work for others, and it seems like things are just clicking for che0nsu at the moment. Whereas Tyler, you know, I only criticize him because of how much respect I have for him. He was, I mean, I've watched more Tyler in a year than I have listened to my girlfriend, I think, in a year. Like, I watched this guy so incredibly much. But I think, you know, recently he's not been putting in as much work as it takes to be at the absolute top of Grandmasters. So I hope to see things turning around for him here, as we know he definitely has the ability to do so.
Yeah, let's check out our fancy new graphics. Very cool. As we see che0nsu's, what effectively his lineup going to be post-ban. So he does play Warrior, but it is banned out. So these are the classes he's got. He's got his Highlander Hunter, his Zoo Warlock, and his Quest Druid to go up against Tyler overall. And what do you make of this?
It's just a very safe lineup. Personally, I am not all too much a fan of Highlander Hunter at the moment. I think it doesn't necessarily do all too well against the field. I personally am more of a fan of the priests that have been knocking around a lot. I think it's generally a very high power level deck. Quest Shaman as well is just a very high power level deck. And I think Reno Hunter, a lot of players, or sorry, Highlander Hunter, kind of realized that the overall power level with the departure of Reno Mage has fallen down, because one of its big prey that it would prey upon in Reno Mage has fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, one thing, you know, we can take a look at Tyler's lineup as well now, but one thing that interests me is that Hunter, you know, if I'm going to make a prediction, might become full circle and go to the fact that that if everyone is adjusting, we see way more Zoo.
Yep.
You know, we've just seen a lot of different decks in this week. If everyone's adjusting to that, does Hunter then become better again? Because, like, is Hunter good versus Zoo? I don't think it's a terrible matchup. And then so on, so on. So maybe it goes full circle and Hunter ends up being a good pick again.
Very possibly.
But we see Tyler's lineup, and I would say this is close to just the lineup. Like, if someone just rocked up to Grandmasters and said, Raven, give me some decks, I'd probably give them Tyler's lineup, to be honest. It's Quest Druid, it's Control Warrior, it's Quest Shaman, and it's Zoo. Just a very, very solid 4 decks. There is the Druid being banned out, so this is what Tyler's got to play with.
Yeah, kind of interesting differences between the similarities they have in their lineups. The Zoo Warlock, which they are going to be lining up against each other first. A couple of differences. Tyler is not running Leroy Jenkins, which of course allows you for a little bit of extra burst damage, which can be very powerful in the matchup, especially now with Nephicet Thrashers knocking about. If you're going Coin Thrasher into Thrasher and you hit yourself for 6 damage, Leroy from your opponent can close out the game very, very quickly. But he has Sea Giants to make up for that, so maybe with his board dominance in the mid-phase of the game, he'll be able to outweigh the benefit that Leroy Jenkins affords che0nsu.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting, because for me, I think generally I'd rather be on che0nsu's side of the table here, because not only is it Leroy, he runs double Soulfire, and Tyler does not. And how, you know, do you remember back in the day, where, you know, last time Zoo was big, where if you were in a mirror and you got to, like, play 1-drop coin Soulfire there, 1-drop?
Yeah.
You're so far ahead most of the time. It's very, you know, just one of the high-tempo players that, say, Rogue Vendetta is known for as well.
I mean, they're just honestly very, very different builds of Zoo overall.
Kind of weird.
There's the eggs knocking about in Tyler's list, which can make for incredibly powerful board plays early on, because one of the things we saw with, was it che0nsu Zoo last week, where he wasn't running the eggs? Someone was running a Zoo last week where they didn't have eggs, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it was che0nsu. And we saw it struggling, honestly. You know, it couldn't find targets for the Evil Genius, and of course the... is he not even playing... He's not even playing
Grim
Grim
Rally.
Rally. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's
because this is
right.
so che0nsu, because he's playing Sinister Deal as well, basically
He's going
instead
for a
of
lackey build.
I think it's more he's just playing aggro.
Yeah.
He just wants everything that can and should and will go face. He's running double Spirit Bomb, so for that quick just removal. Whereas I don't believe, Tyler's running no Spirit Bombs. So che0nsu just wants to get the taunt and big annoying minions out of the way.
Yeah.
Face. Leroy Soulfire is the damage from hand.
Very interesting.
And it's a very different approach than the sort of zoo value style you can go with Sea Giants, with Grim Rally. But honestly, I don't mind it so much because I think it might do better in the mirror.
Yeah, I think I'm a slightly bigger fan of Tyler's build because I think burst damage at the moment against the decks that Zoo is trying to do well in is not that important. Like, for example, against a Druid, I think having an extra Soulfire and Leroy against the likes of Hidden Oasis is effectively useless. It doesn't even come close to winning the game.
It's very interesting, though, because I almost think, well, the heal from Hidden Oasis, you need to make up that damage.
Which you do by having stickier boards. Like, imagine Sea Giant. What does Druid do against Sea Giant? Nothing. Even Starfall doesn't kill it off.
Starfall won't want any minion.
I think we're getting. I think we're getting pretty like. You're asking a lot of your opponent to be able to clear off stuff like that, which is why I think bigger minions, stickier boards is what I favor at the moment, because I think that also is going to do a lot better against the Warriors. Like, I would argue this build from Tyler is probably not even that bad against Warrior, whereas che0nsu's build with no eggs, no sticky minions, less value in the deck as well, no Grim Rallies, is going to struggle against the Warriors.
Maybe a nod to Shaman because of the MCTs and stuff like that. Maybe and the lack of heal. That yes, Shaman has Life Drinker, but come on, it doesn't count as heal. You know what I mean? Like maybe a nod. I just think it's cool that it's like two Zoo decks that are at the same time very similar and very different.
Very different.
So let's see what's happened here. che0nsu's managed to get hold of the board.
Yeah.
Mainly just down to the early one drops and some nice trades. Whereas Tyler looks like Tyler actually looks like he's the value deck, which just isn't the case, right? At all.
Yeah, well, he's fallen behind, right? He's drawn all the weird, janky cards. He's got Evil Recruiter and no way to get a Lackey down. He's got Grim Rally, nothing to destroy. This is what can happen in Zoo matchups where, I mean, che0nsu had the absolute freak.
Yeah. Well, the question here is, can Tyler come back? Because this is looking horrible.
Yes, I think he
But
can.
Sea Giants exist in Tyler's deck, which is a great comeback tool because it's such a big minion. It normally is something that can swing the game. It may be less about winning board, but more about punching che0nsu hard enough that he loses.
Very possible.
Because I think that Sea Giants with their one attack a turn does not beat a Zoo board, but you could race them, which is the key, I think.
che0nsu's other big difference in the deck that we haven't even talked about is Magic Carpet, which is huge.
Tyler's not running
lock down the deck. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think, you know what? With all the differences, I actually didn't even see Magic Carpet.
It's such different lists, and it definitely makes for an interesting dynamic here, where as soon as Magic Carpet sticks in any deck that runs it, be it the Paladin decks that are running it, Zoo obviously is the main one, then it becomes very, very, very difficult to swing things back.
I got it in my Quest Shaman once, and
with all the lackeys,
because it evolved into it basically, but with all the lackeys and the murlocs and stuff, it was like, okay, every lackey is already good, and then it has +1 attack and rush. It's like, this is. I'll get close to saying almost impossible to remove in a normal fashion. But Tyler can go Cable Rat, can maybe get Ethereal Lackey, discover a spell, could discover Hellfire. Like any of these things can happen. He didn't get the Ethereal Lackey, which I think is a huge problem.
It's not that terrible of a situation though. Like Grim Rally in combination with Serpent Egg, or I guess Ethereal Lackey.
Anything to kill that Void Walker, because then he could Grim Rally and trade the Demon into the carpet.
This is a big push onto the board, and as it currently stands, che0nsu is not pushing that much damage forward, and now he is arguably behind on board. That does help though.
Oh yeah.
Quite a lot.
This turn can be Genius into X lackeys, depending on what happens. You can even one lackey tap.
That's what.
And then the next turn you can lackey Evil Recruiter.
I think I still like going for Genius first. Just
just to see, you got to see what you get first, 100%. Even this gets rushed now. Because the thing is, Tyler's made a good run onto the board, but che0nsu's minions, or a lot of them at least, have rush. So he can fight back quite quickly.
I don't know, Tyler's got the combo of Reform Scheme for 4 imps plus Grim Rally. I think because of the lack of damage from che0nsu early on, Tyler's doing a pretty surprisingly good job of pulling things back here.
Everything's dead though.
Oh! What? Yeah, that's right, Tyler. That's
Did you say
absolutely right.
lack of damage, Derek?
Yeah, apparently I did. My mistake.
But honestly, even without that, che0nsu kind of whittles down this board. And yes, Tyler can make a board of imps, but it's still probably not quite enough on its own.
But it might be. Look at this situation where he can buff up the egg. I wonder if he trade it in first, because he wants to be able to kill off the carpet, but still can't quite do so. But che0nsu still killed off all his lackeys, so the evil recruit is just a 3-3. It's all positives and negatives.
So many possibilities.
It's a very difficult situation to pull this back in definitively in che0nsu's favor. And I wonder if maybe he should have foregone fully clearing the board, ignoring the egg, to tap there and keep a lackey for evil recruiter next turn.
I think I like the clear.
So
You like the clear?
Because it's...
He's low on cards now, though.
But his board never gets removed this turn, right?
Sure.
Realistically,
Yeah.
it never really gets removed. And as long as he keeps carpet alive, he should generally be able to make positive trades every turn. And Tyler just won't be able to keep up. Like, look at last turn. Tyler had a good board, and now it's gone.
That might be true, but as soon as Tyler sticks a Sea Giant or...
But also, that's why maybe he traded. Like, Sea Giant Pass this turn sucks because there weren't enough minions on the board.
Good point, yeah.
He might not want to give Tyler tons of minions to mess around with if he thinks he can do it without.
This is, however, the power turn that Tyler had been waiting for.
This is a good push. And again, the value of the X, right?
Yeah. This is the only play for che0nsu. Obviously, destroying a 3-2 feels horrible, but the evil recruiter and the lackeys is huge. But as we're seeing here for che0nsu, in this particular situation, obviously this isn't how it's going to shake out every single time. But the extra damage that was afforded to him from Leroy has been all but useless. It's just a dead card in his hand.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're playing Zoo and you've got Leroy in the deck and you have it on turn 1, it's never going to be too great, is it? 'Cause it's -1 card.
But I'm saying, even if he top decked it at any point, it looks like if he's going to win this game, it won't be just chipping damage over the finish line, I think. Maybe if Tyler keeps tapping and gets a Nephicet Thrasher or something.
I also mean, if che0nsu top decked it now and had any other card in his hand all game that wasn't Leroy, che0nsu might even be further ahead.
Good point.
So we'll see how it runs out. Solarium, very good pickup. Does he need to play it this turn? What if he just plays an egg and the 3/3?
Yeah, I think I like just spending his mana here.
Just drop it.
Because off of the Solarium next turn, he's got a pretty good chance to find Grim Rally or Evil Recruiter. Or
Most importantly as well, there's still Nephicet Pressures, there's a Disease and Vulture as well. Both high cost mana cards, so you don't really want to Solarium this turn on low mana into 1 or 2 of those.
Good.
I do like this from Tyler though. Just go face, make a che0nsu trade.
And it's a very difficult decision for che0nsu now, but I don't think he can afford to go face here, even with the Leroy in hand.
The decision just got easier as well with the Vulture pickup.
Yes, yeah. He's got to keep the trading going. Oh, that's pretty good. His 3 drops are on his side this game. And Tyler, the problem for him is he has to be very, very hesitant about just launching everything face because he has no burst damage in the deck.
Oh, those are good cards for che0nsu.
Yeah, that is a lot of damage that Tyler's inflicting on himself.
Why do you fall? These stones shall break your bones.
che0nsu is still going to have Vulture up, which is a big deal.
But even though Tyler doesn't have much burst damage, this board, as it just currently stands, is a lot of damage. So for che0nsu, every time he taps, it just gets that little bit scarier and scarier.
The Goblin Lackey is actually pretty good because of Vulture as well, though. Because tap gets you a minion, and then Lackey can make it rush, which is kind of negates the damage that tap deals because you're removing it probably a minion off the board as well.
That'd be a good point.
Well, all up for grabs now with Sinister Deal. Wait, that is when you play a spell,
You
get
add
minion?
a mage minion
I
to
think
your
so,
hand.
yeah. Oh, okay.
That could
that's
be
it.
pretty nuts, actually. That's a very good
Oh,
3-drop
Titanic
you got.
Lackey. Not a bad pickup.
Yeah, I think you take that every single day of the week. That's what che0nsu's
Ooh.
been searching for a while. Caligos for Pyroblast Lethal.
He planned this all along! This is why he wants Leroy, to get him to 10. che0nsu is a genius. Like, look at this now. Like, he can give another minion rush. He can taunt up a minion.
Yeah.
Like, he can just clear this board, leave an egg on it, and who cares?
I like everything I'm seeing. I like everything I'm seeing. And as this feels like the final board situation, I think Tyler now is really going to struggle to get board back before he dies. And the lack of burst is hurting him.
Well, that's it, and it's very interesting to see. You start to quickly, like, che0nsu looked like he could be in a rough spot because he has burst cards in his hand that don't do much, you know, in the early game and doesn't have giants and such. But at this point in the game, you start to see that Tyler has nothing that he can do that impacts this game or snatches the game out of che0nsu's hands. Whereas che0nsu, even if he had his board wiped, if he dealt one more damage, he has 2 Soulfires in the deck that is lethal.
But then if we look at the game in terms of the cards that Tyler had switched in, like imagine both of these Grim Rallies were like a Leroy and a Soulfire. Like, you'd be in a worse situation.
Yeah, it's
the
so
burst
weird,
damage
isn't
would
it?
be less
Yeah,
good.
exactly. It's so strange, and like obviously it's very difficult to rewind time and play a different game of Hearthstone in our heads. But you just start to see the pros and cons, and it's where I think I'm not even sure whose deck I like more because they just work differently.
Very
You know,
much so.
so it's very interesting. che0nsu taking game number 1 there in the Zoo Mirror, and his you know, his Leroy coming into play at the very, very end.
Yeah, I think, you know, what it really comes down to is, as we've known from Zoo Mirrors, since the dawn of time in Hearthstone, it's a deck that has been around forever in one form or another. In the mirrors, the fact that che0nsu was able to go coin double 1-drop on 1, double 1-drop on 2, it's usually a
pretty good
situation that's
opening.
going to win you the game. Exactly. It's about getting that first sticking onto the board, and then you can start value trading like crazy. And I think che0nsu showed excellent recognition of the matchup in playing not too aggressively despite the bursts in his deck, and it meant that in the end he was ahead on board and took the game.
Yeah, he starts off to a great start versus Tyler going 1-0. Let's find out if he can go 2-0 after a break.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I play Hearthstone and my in-game name is Frosty. Our favourite Tiki character probably has to be Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. I love his sarcastic wit and charm. Dog person is a fairly good way to describe me. Describe myself in a word, huh? Well, oh, geez, that's a bit of a toughie. Jokester. It's definitely got to be meat lovers, by far. There are a lot of handsome Europeans in the Hearthstone scene. You know, there's quite a few playboys out there, so I suppose if I could turn into another pro, it'd have to be Orange. I mean, he is pretty handsome and good looking, so what can I say?
What's up, Hearthstone fans? Welcome back to another season of The Curve, where we draw the biggest headlines from this past weekend on Curve. I'm your host, Simon Sottle-Welch. Let's do this. Of the 3 Grandmasters that have qualified for BlizzCon, only 2 of them have a win. That's a combined record of 2-10 to start off the season. PNC was the first to win a series on Saturday, and Surrender also won once on Sunday. But Fenomeno remains winless. Hopefully, our BlizzCon representatives can pick it up in the next weeks after this slow start. On the flip side, it seems that all the Grandmasters that have won a past World Championship are coming back strong in the second season. Tom 60229 and Hunter Ace are undefeated in their divisions, while Pavel also sits on top of his. Firebat is the only past champion that is not quite sitting in first place, but he is still playing very well. He gave a very convincing performance against Muzzy, which may or may not have cost someone a mustache. As stated previously, Hunter Ace is undefeated. He's won all his matches and has only lost one game in the course of 2 weeks. After bringing the innovative Bwonsamdi Priest this past weekend, he's shown us why he's the current reigning Hearthstone champion. Not only has Hunter Ace been doing well in Grandmasters, he also finished the last ladder season at #1. Some people think he won't lose a single match this season, and it's looking like these people might be right. Ex-caster, Masters Tour extraordinaire, and newcomer to the Grandmaster scene, che0nsu, got his first pair of Ws this weekend as he beat Purple and Strifecrow in some very exciting matches. che0nsu was able to take some calculated risks that paid off in the Strifecrow series to beat his Priest twice. If you can't watch the whole series, I suggest watching the interview at the end of the match to hear che0nsu's thought process through some of the difficult decisions he had to make in those games. In this week's Meta Moment, we want to highlight the Priest deck that has been brought by several Grandmasters this weekend. After being the highest win rate deck overall at the recent Masters Tour event in Seoul, Combo Priest has continued to be a force through the early stages of Grandmasters Season 2. While Divine Spirit and Inner Fire has always been a go-to combo for Priest for several expansions, Saviors of Uldum introduced 2 incredibly powerful tools to help Priest consistently build sticky board states, Psychopomp and High Priest Armet. Armet in particular was used to incredible effect by Hunter Ace to dig himself out of a rough-looking situation in his World Championship rematch against Viper. Despite being targeted by the most recent wave of nerfs, many players are starting to realize that Combo Priest is still going to be a force in Grandmasters going forward. If you missed any of the Grandmasters action, you can check out the VODs on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Hearthstone Esports. Grandmasters resumes this weekend. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's it for us. We'll see you in the tavern.
che0nsu versus Tyler is going to continue. che0nsu getting the better of Tyler in that zoom mirror, and he's going to be moving on to Hunter, I believe, whereas Tyler is going to be sticking to this zoo. And this is a matchup that interests me a lot now because just looking at it, I feel like Hunter could have actually a very, very solid matchup here. And if that's the case, like I mentioned earlier, maybe Hunter goes full circle. Post-Mage nerf, Hunter gets a little bit worse because it was decent versus Mage. But now, because people are playing decks like Zoo to try and beat, say, Druids and other decks that are reigning dominant, maybe you do just go back and play Hunter again. It's kind of strange.
Maybe. I think, I agree, it can be a very interesting matchup indeed. One of the main things is because obviously, with Highlander Hunter being a singleton deck, you only have one copy of each card in your deck. You lose a little bit of consistency in so doing that. But when you look at the mulligan win rate of all the cards against Warlock, a lot of the secrets are very high, which means there's a lot of kind of redundancy with your mulligan. If you're hitting Rat Trap, Explosive Trap, Snake Trap as the main ones, you can find yourself very easily pulling ahead on board, or at least messing with the Zoo's game plan in quite a drastic way. And then when you add on to that, you have these very, very powerful cards you can hit, like Zephyrus in particular. Secret Keeper is a major boon to your game plan. I would say that che0nsu, as long as he doesn't get completely swarmed early on, does have a pretty good shot at pulling ahead in the early game. Yeah,
and that's the big point. Like, almost every secret, I think, is actually good versus Zoo. Not even just okay. I actually think most of them are good. And your deck revolves around that. And the second you just get a bit of a curve going, even if you turn 2 snipe into them not being able to just play much on turn 2, well, I think Hunter will do better the longer the game goes on. So you've bought some time. And looking at this list, there is Eaglehorn Warbow and Desert Spear. So there's the weapons on 3 that can get the job done pretty well. Unleash the Hounds, of course. Ziliax is in there to help out. Yeah. I think the matchup's not too bad. There's even the Springpaw along with Secret Keeper, so a lot of cheap minions for che0nsu to keep up here.
Very interesting mulligan from Tyler there, where the almost package, it feels like at this point, of Diseased Vulture and Nephicet Thrasher. They come together. They're, like I said, it's a complete package at this point. You play the Thrasher on 3, and then turn 4 it damages you as you play the Vulture. But he just keeps the Vulture and throws away the Thrasher.
I think that's reasonable.
What's your opinion of that?
Well, one of the problems is if you play Thrasher against Hunter and it gets deadly shotted, that's a nightmare because you're not going wide enough.
I agree.
And also, that is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you keep keep Thrasher, you've mulliganed for less other cards, which means you won't have as many 1-drops on the board to defend it against spot removal. It's even, you know, look at Thrasher versus a Secret. If it's Snipe, it's now 1 health. If it's Freezing Trap, well, the attack hurts you and then it gets bounced back to make it 5 mana. You know, there's a lot of... I feel like you can run into more issues than it will solve if you keep it, whereas if you throw other stuff, I think Vulture's a 100% keep.
Really?
In Zoo. I think the card's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Thrasher is a reasonable throw. I think it's a little bit too slow and clunky.
I find that kind of surprising because I have to be honest, I was looking at the pretty nice curve. I mean, I was considering mulliganing the Vulture because you have 1-drop, a very sticky 1-drop in Mecharoo, and then you coin the Thrasher. That's a very big, meaty minion that can start dealing a lot of damage very quickly. But I guess one of the things is the most glaring part of Nephicet Thrasher, I always overlook it, is the self-damage, which can be
Can you take
pretty
it versus
scary.
Hunter?
Exactly. This is a deck that can go very aggressive very quickly. So from Tyler, maybe he's taking a slightly more reserved approach to the matchup. And, well, I say reserved, what he's about to do is absolutely disgusting. But this is, I suppose, by mulliganing away the bigger cards, he's more likely to hit this kind of dream scenario.
Exactly, yeah. And this is what you want. Drawbacks, of course, explosive trap's kind of annoying. But also, Tyler can actually play Vulture into explosive trap attack if he wants, and that procs it. So he gets another minion there. But yeah, this is a really, really solid opening. che0nsu even has Deadly Shot available, not going to do much now though, and che0nsu might just be dead.
I think he's probably just dead, unless he can snipe exactly the snake here. Which he can't, spoilers.
Huh.
Well, that was a game of Hearthstone. We usually have 1 or 2 turns to kind of just talk hypothetically about the matchup in general. Not this time. Probably should have got rolling a little bit quicker.
We basically discussed the mulligans and the game ended. But that's what happens. You know, I probably look very silly now. It's like, Hunter matchup, good. If you do that to a Hunter and they have 0 1-drops, there were no secrets doing anything. So, yes, the game can run away. And that's the power of Zoo and why people play it and why Zoo's been played for many years throughout pretty much Hearthstone's life. Because at most times you can make a pretty good Zoo deck.
Yeah, exactly. Just the cheat curve and the tapping to give you the power curve combos. Because all the best versions of Zoo, in my opinion, have had combinations of cards that work best together. I mean, usually in the form of eggs and self-destruction, because destroying your own minions is very core to the Warlock identity. And whether it was an Nerubian egg back in the day, or the Scarab eggs, or
the Nerubian egg was so busted.
It was okay. Yeah, that was another.
Look at all the eggs that have released since, and they're all progressively less powerful because Blizzard have realized, like, these egg minions are pretty sick.
Yeah. A lot of eggs at this point. But yes, I think this was a good way to go for Tyler in going nice and wide there, because that's what Hunter struggles to deal with. So now with all the Warlocks out of the way, both having taken a victory, I wonder what Tyler is going to go to try and counteract this Hunter. He's left with Warrior and Shaman. Well, assuming that che0nsu even sticks it.
Yeah, okay, so we've just found out, and it's actually just going to be the Druid for che0nsu versus the Warrior for Tyler. So we're going to get the, maybe the iconic matchup of the meta right now, maybe if you take away Quest Shaman a little bit, but Druid Warrior definitely seen as 2 of the overall best classes and decks. One interesting thing about this, I was watching Omnistone yesterday, so there was Firebat, Zalae, Frodan, and Kibler on. And there was an interesting discussion about Druid, in that Firebat is a firm believer that Druid, you just don't need to run Chef Nomi. You don't need it versus Warrior. You should, if you play the game correctly, you should have the right amount of stuff to be Warrior. And also, because it's such a horrible card in any matchup that you can't empty your deck, that it's just a waste. And there's other things you could use. You could run, for example, like double bees. Actually bees instead of Chef Nomi are 2 drastically different cards, but that might actually make the deck overall a bit better. So just interesting to see how good the deck is and how these guys play now, because I feel like this matchup is getting a bit more figured out. But for me, Firebat thought King Ferris was insane, and I still don't like it.
Really?
So yeah, I just, or at least I think he did. Maybe it was Zalae who thought it was insane, but the problem with King Ferris is I feel like in most cases, apart from the exceptional ones, your stuff just dies anyway. You don't normally make anything that's crazy.
Yeah. I see your point. I think King Ferris is not as epic as you would expect it to be, given the effect that you want to
In this deck, at least.
Yes, but I think it's necessary, because if you don't include it, then your opponent doesn't even have to kill anything. You don't have any meat in your deck. And I think the deck is dangerously close to not having a strong win condition as it is, because when you look at the deck, as I am always surprised by playing it, there's just not that much. It's mostly removal and draw early on in order to survive to the quest. So personally, I'm a big fan of King Ferris. The che0nsu, I think, is a very interesting discussion. And personally, I am a big fan of what Bunnyhopper and Casey have done, which is, I believe, this week included a copy of Floop's Glorious Goop instead of the Gloop instead of the top end stuff, because it gives you more game versus Shaman. It's insane against that because of all the tokens that they're making, and a little bit more game against aggro as well. It also opens up an OTK with Swipe, weirdly enough, if you have Elise in the deck as well. But yeah, I think generally che0nsu probably is overkill. It kind of feels almost like training wheels in the deck, where you don't need it against Warrior, but it kind of locks out the game.
Yeah, it's like if you really want to never lose, no matter what you do, more or less, you should play Nomi. But the idea is that if there's a card that's cuttable and you can win without it, you should shore up some other matchups with that card space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so far though, che0nsu is getting that quest done, as we've sort of decided to just chat a little bit about matchups in general.
I mean, this is just what the deck's doing.
But yeah, this is where it gets interesting now. That Collider pickup is actually pretty huge, because the key turn is always that Oasis Surger, and Super Collider is pretty good versus that card.
Yeah, I love the pre-equip there from Tyler, because he knows exactly. This is, in my opinion, one of the biggest weaknesses of Quest Druid, is you know pretty much exactly what they're going to do every turn of the game, because they're very limited in their options. Oasis Surger on 5, it's either that or Starfall. Those are the only two options. And so this is very, very strong against Oasis Surger. A Mega Devastator would have just been value traded, so I like holding it back.
And to be fair to che0nsu, there wasn't much of a better play, and also he did kill off some minions, because you don't want to get overran. che0nsu already on 20 health. You really want to just get pressured out by a control warrior, although it is starting to happen. But I think the real trick here is Cenarius and how he can be played, because if you have a couple of minions, or even one, maybe two minions, and you drop Cenarius down,
That's enough.
that is, you can win the game off the back of that.
Yeah.
And even Brawl doesn't really deal with it, because normally the thing that's left alive is pretty beefy. It's it's normally minimum a 4/4.
So we've got a very interesting decision here by Tyler to go for the Omega Devastator. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not certain that I like it. It's obviously first and foremost vulnerable to second Oasis Surger, but that's not really a massive concern. You've already seen one. It's unlikely he's got the second one. I think it's more the fact to me that Tyler has a hand that's pretty chock full of removal. And he'd rather save these for turn 10, just let che0nsu go for a big board and then brawl it. But having said that, if che0nsu was just to go for Hidden Oasis here, then maybe having that minion on board so that you can shield slam and push face.
I think that's the point. It's kind of backwards as well, right? It's like mirrored. Tyler's hand is full of removal, so he doesn't need to keep the Omega Devastators, and he can actually play aggressive minions and play an aggressive game plan out and make che0nsu respond.
Yes,
it depends where you're sitting in the room, right? Of how you look at it, because right now this is even opening up if he just snap instantly. But imagine if he plays another Devastator. It's, I would say, unlikely there's Oasis Surger number 2 in hand. You play that, and even if he plays Oasis Surger number 2, it gets cleaned up super easy. There's still Brawl, there's still Shield Slam, and I feel like che0nsu's falling further behind if that's the case.
Well, that's my my concern. Is I understand that it's not that bad playing it out. Like, you always have a way to pull yourself out. I'm just not convinced of how big the benefit of having an Omega Devastator on board actually is compared to having the Battle Cry on turn 10. Because I'm thinking, 4 damage base every turn, actually not that relevant. I think when they've still got 2 Oasis Surges in the 2 Hidden Oases in the deck, and 2 Ferocious Howls in the deck at that point as well. I wonder if it was worth just holding it back, because there's so much removal in the deck that it's not likely to do very much.
My question is, do you really want to go super slow if your opponent's playing Nomi? Is that something that's forcing Tyler, to play more aggressively? If it's like, you've got so much of this late game, you've got Nomi into flute Nomi, and so on, that you can't on average clear that easily, then what if I just play these out and make him do stuff and slow him down?
That's my argument, is that it's... I agree that if you could go aggressive and like try and win early on or even disrupt their game plan, this would be a good strategy to go for. I just think from what I've seen personally from my own perspective in the Warrior versus Druid matchup is that these aggressive pushes early on don't actually gain you that much value. They don't gain you much percentage in the matchup. And so I'm not even saying it's wrong because it's worked out reasonably well here for Tyler. This is, I would say, the best case scenario where it's stuck on board for a couple of turns, got some chip damage in. It still just gets cleaned up and he hasn't gained that much and now he's down to Devastated.
Well, that one's a pretty good pickup, especially post Oasis.
I'm not sure how I feel about the use of the, I can't remember what that card is.
Mark of Nature.
Mark of Nature, yeah, I can remember Mark of the Wild, Mark of Nature, Power of the Wild.
Woods.
Yeah, the Mark of Nature there from che0nsu, because it just allows the minions to be cleaned up by Super Collider, whereas otherwise they couldn't be cleaned up both by Super Collider, because they would have both been at 1 health.
But they would, right, because the Town Cry is on the board.
Right, but now the Town Cry just survives, and he spent an extra card.
Okay.
You know, he got 4 damage through to face. I think that's probably not worth it.
Okay. I think he might be
Maybe
trying
wants
to
to
just
dump
empty his
cards.
hand. Yeah, that's a lot of cards in hand, and when
Fair
you want to
enough.
play cards like Nourish, you need to do something.
That's
right?
actually a very fair point. But now as the game carries on piece for piece, very slowly, I wonder if Tyler will be able to push enough damage to get there.
Is he actually considering Luciana?
Oh, that's an interesting point. I was only considering Snip Snap or Dr. Boom, and honestly I wasn't even really considering Snip Snap. I was only really considering Dr. Boom this turn, but Elixiana is a good point, because it does, I suppose, make King Feoris, hey, off the top, a little bit worse. But I think if King Feoris comes down, Tyler pretty much has to brawl anyway.
Oh, okay, that's not a bad one.
That's very good.
That's like, I don't know, 6
That's
out of 8.
very good, yeah. I suppose that 1 minion surviving in addition to the mechanical dragon does make Super Collider a bit better, but I think you'd take this as che0nsu.
But I guess nothing he attacks into kills the 7/7 anyway, right?
Fair point. I mean, maybe he can rush in a Snip
Yeah,
Snap or
true.
something. Makes it a little bit easier to clear off at the very least.
And most importantly, this is where we see the value. You know, I always question King Feoris and how good it is. We know this can get cleaned up fairly easily, even though this was a pretty solid. This is one of the better King Feorises I've seen. But there is wave number 2 from che0nsu. So, you know, we'll see. And I guess the idea is the second this doesn't get cleared up, you just place an Aris on it again. It's pretty insane, but we'll see what happens. He's not going to go for Brawl. So Tyler taking this slow.
As he does have the liberty to do, this is only 5 damage on the board now.
Yeah, once you get rid of this king,
Yeah. And, you know, fair play to Tyler, because these brawls, as we always talk about in these matchups, are incredibly valuable. When you're looking at minimum 3 massive threats, and probably much more, 4 massive threats, because you've obviously got King Feoris, Nomi, Cenarius, and Floop, which is 4, and then you can discover even more scenarii.
I wonder.
I would have already played Cenarius and just gone face.
Does mean you lose the Floop being King Feoris, but I think that's probably not too bad.
Yeah, you gain it being 3 scenarii intents, or whatever they are now, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with it. This is the kind of
Just
situation where
get him.
you can. I think you could maybe make the read who doesn't have brawl, but at the very least you can say if you do want to brawl this, go ahead. I've got plenty more.
It's pretty horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a great brawl.
Ooh, there is another board clear, which is obviously pretty important against all the threats that he needs to worry about.
I think he goes for the brawl this time anyway. mainly because that security rover. Not rover. Sentry, right?
Security rover and then security bots.
Wait, why am I saying sentry? What's sentry? Just making names of cards. No, for some reason I thought it was called sentry. It's Warpath play instead. It does interest me because I don't really know what it does. Because now he doesn't have anything to proc Plague, and he just made a load of 2/3 taunts.
I'm not entirely sure Tyler
Was that just terrible? Like he's in it.
He can rush
Isn't
in.
he in just
he can rush in the 1/1s, so he can hit Cenarius into the 4/4. So he has to tank 7. What?
Oh, is he going to trade and?
Oh, into there. Okay. No, that was another mistake. Just sunk one too many in. Yeah.
Wow, that was. Yeah, that was.
Oh, that was tough. That was very tough.
I think
to
that
his
was.
credit at the end
And
there.
he even played the flunky and didn't get to choose the taunt.
I think he got the best one. It was Abomination or Mirage off the other two.
We talked about Mirage last week, Derek. It's sick.
Might not actually be that bad if you just want to protect your face.
But that was just botched, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think that just went from bad to worse.
I mean,
to be honest,
it was such a difficult turn, and I fully understand what Tyler is doing. Again and again, we've said you need to hold on to these removal cards because Nomi will just win the game.
But he threw it away, right?
By playing the Warpath.
Because Warpath Plague
that's the
is
combo.
better than Brawl, so Brawl that turn where there's cards like the Security Rover on the board, which are annoying to deal with the outcome of the Brawl, and then for Nomi you just have Warpath Plague, done, there's one gone, finished, no questions, no queries as to what lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was very, very odd.
And, you know, I can quote-unquote bail him out, I suppose, by saying, again, it was a very difficult turn, but this is a very difficult tournament. This is Hearthstone Grandmasters. You have to be able to make those tough turns.
And this very well may not be the approach, but if it was me, for example, if I think there's a complicated turn and I'm not quite completely confident in pulling it off, I just do the simple turn and maybe take another turn to think about it before I actually get it done. Because these ropes, it feels like a long time, maybe when we're watching it, but I feel like you analyze the situation as soon as your opponent's turn ends, because obviously if they play minions, the situation changes.
Yeah.
And then you look up and the rope's like, you're halfway into the rope potentially starting to burn. And then that,
I mean,
takes time, right?
That's just good Hearthstone theory, having a decent play and then you spend your entire turn looking for a better one.
Yeah.
You always have a backup that you can fall down to. But for che0nsu here, you can see him physically wincing at the brawl coming down in favor of Tyler, because I think at that point he probably did have the read that there was no brawl. After he saw that pretty horrendous turn from Tyler, he's thinking, okay, I can just go all in here, and then I even have the backup of Nomi in case things go wrong. Now, of course, things slow down for a few turns, unless we were to see Hidden Oasis, Cenarius, and then a Nubasath Defender, I suppose, or Nourish.
Yeah, I think che0nsu should just sit back now. Look at his card count. I think he just sits back and gets Nomi cooking.
Yeah,
literally.
The it's too important, I think, to save the flute version.
che0nsu made some great pushes. It didn't quite work, although Tyler's on 13 health. Tyler is nearly dead, by the way. But you make a few pushes, it didn't quite work out. The removal's there, the brawl's there, the brawl worked in Tyler's favor, so on, so on. You're at 4 cards now after Nourish. Just play Nomi and win. I think is che0nsu's mindset here.
If Tyler can survive, though, he does have Plague of Wrath and Brawl to potentially deal with both iterations of Chef Nomi. He needs to find an activator, be it, it could be his hero power.
The problem is, if he doesn't use Plague of Wrath now, or Brawl will probably Plague to push damage, then he could just be dead regardless.
He could. But these are the last 2 pieces of hard removal he has in the deck, which means he knows pretty much for certain, unless he can get more off of Elysiana, if he uses Plague of Wrath now, how does he win? I don't think he can.
Don't know.
We've seen both we've seen both Devastators as well, so he can't even go like zap zap rush rush or something. But at the same time, like you said, if he doesn't use it, he could just die. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
a
it feels
really tough
terrible.
call. It's a
really
tough call. I guess the idea might be that Tyler has X turns. He knows both nourishes have been played.
Yeah.
So he's got X turns to deal with this and to set up, right? You know, because he has the hero powers.
Sure.
Might even drop Elysiana to try and get some more removal. I don't know. But Tyler might have just made the choice of saying, look, I'm going to take these 2-3 turns to try and find an answer. And if I can't, well, boo-hoo, that it's a loss. But if I can, great. But already, look. I mean, look how close that was. Double swiping there. It literally would have been lethal.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting close to it, especially as che0nsu still has Zephyrus, I think, in the deck, right, to find lethal for him.
Does che0nsu run it?
Yeah.
Oh, he does? Yeah.
And he hasn't played it yet, right? Has he?
Oh, it's definitely active as well. There's only 2 cards left in the deck. Is this going to be a Zephyrus Pyroblast haha hit game?
I mean, Fireball will deal 7 as it currently stands, so even if a taunt comes down for Tyler, it's... Well, I guess with Swipe he could get it 100%.
Okay, then.
I'm not seeing it. Even Town Crier plus... Town Crier into Ziliax. che0nsu, if he draws Zephyrus, would be able to get lethal anyway.
And again, this is one game, of course, from what I'm about to say. It's one game, tiny sample size, but che0nsu's not played Floop, he's not played Nomi, and he's going to win this game.
Yeah.
Like, almost certain.
Oh, I mean, I'm fully with you. I think that the Nomi is
Crazy, isn't it?
probably slight overkill. I think you're more justified in playing this in Conquest than on Ladder, where there's obviously a lot less warriors knocking about.
Okay, Ziliax is a thing.
It is a thing. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 armor. Because of that magnetization, does that mean che0nsu doesn't just win on the spot? Because otherwise he would have gone Swipe, Starfall, Push Face, and win.
If that was Zephyrus, he would have won.
He would have won, right? So
Yeah, because he doesn't get any damage. He just swipes face twice.
War Druid
if it was
Loti.
Zephyrus.
Yeah, of course. War Druid Loti, Swipe, Trade, no. War Druid Loti is 6 damage face with Swipe. I'm not seeing lethal. I don't know if I'm just being an idiot here.
Often is the case, but I think you are right this time.
Because it heals him, right? It heals him too much. Like if he goes Swipe plus Starfall, it gains the armor.
Which means the armor once,
he'd be at 1 health.
Though, right?
Yes, so he could push the 5 off of Swipe and then the 4 off of Loti on forward. Which would be 1 damage off lethal.
Can he...
Time waits for no one.
So what if he goes...
I mean, I think
that's
that's
what
fine.
if he goes...
If he just goes Swipe face and then Starfall pushes face, his opponent's at 1, he has Zephyrus bottom card in his deck, he will win the game. Yes, yeah. This is
I was just trying to see if like a weird second Loti for extra spell damage,
That's
Power of
what
the
I was looking
Wild,
at.
Swipe was going to get him there, but no, I mean this is as close to lethal as you realistically want to get, especially knowing that Tyler has the Zap hero power. Oh, you'll have to see what hero power he gets.
Of course, it gains
the
twice,
damage.
even though it dies. Interestingly, I forgot about that. That's like the puzzle for lethal in the Boom Laboratories that was always impossible to get with the Hydras, and you had to kill it like with over damage with Wild Pyromancers.
Oh,
you had to get it down to -1 health to do an extra 3 damage. I was stuck on that one for ages.
But that's lethal for che0nsu, as Tyler has no way to gain health, so he is extremely dead.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is lethal because the last card in his deck is Zephyrus.
It is right. He hasn't played it already this game.
If he's played it, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
So we both missed it if he's played it.
And I think his play indicates, that it is as well, right? And even if it's not, he's got blooming Chef Nomi and then another Chef Nomi he's got. I think it's probably quite content.
Cards.
Last
There we
card
go.
in the deck.
You wish
3 wishes, but 1 is good enough here for che0nsu.
Oh, which one's good?
Hellfire
this
is
is
cool.
important.
Hellfire
is
is
pretty
cool.
cool. Hey,
Yay.
che0nsu knows what he's doing.
My boy. Thanks,
che0nsu's
Zephyrus.
also the winner of this series. He's going to go up 4-1 in Grandmasters overall. And Tyler going to go down to 2-3. And che0nsu, I'm liking it this season. I think he's playing very solid. I like his lineups. One thing I questioned a lot last season, obviously it was Specialist, so it's a different format, but I questioned some of his deck submissions last season. I didn't really like some of the things he was going for. But this, I feel like his lineups just feel nothing too flashy, but just pretty solid. Good, solid decks, and he's playing well. That normally leads to wins in Hearthstone.
Yeah, it does. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders this season. I still question some of his decks, like obviously the Reno Highlander Hunter. I'm not personally a big fan of that deck as it currently stands, but his builds of the deck list are very interesting. That Zoo in particular, I'd be curious to hear what his opinions of the matchups are, why he's going for a more burn damage focused version of the deck rather than the Egg and Sea Giant version, which I mean, I would argue it wasn't particularly down to him having that build that he beat Tyler, but maybe it helps him in certain matchups, like the Shaman matchup.
That's it,
he can just push for more burn damage.
Yeah, very, very interesting overall, whereas Tyler taking a loss this week in his first match of the weekend. But, you know, honestly, I don't know how much impact that sort of fumbled turn made to the game. Would Tyler have ended up losing anyway? Maybe not. I think it's likely Tyler loses that game. If it, you know, say the blunder just, even if it cleared the board, I think the game would continue and probably che0nsu would still win. But still, just not getting clear-cut, you know, turns done and finished. I think even if the turn that you decide may not be the best turn you could have done, do it properly and finish it. It's just key number one for Hearthstone right now. But anyway, let's move on to match